The cold bit into my skin as I leaned against the brick wall outside Ricci's, the most exclusive Italian restaurant in the city. My uniform, a simple black dress that hung loose on my frame, offered little protection against the December wind. I'd lost too much weight in the past months, and the fatigue that had become my constant companion weighed heavier tonight. Double shifts for 2 weeks straight would do that to you. 10 more minutes, Elena, I whispered to myself, watching my breath form small clouds in the air. Just 10 more minutes until my shift ended, and I could go back to my tiny apartment, to my sleeping daughter, to wondering how I'd make rent this month. The restaurant door swung open, releasing a wave of warmth, the rich scent of garlic and wine, and the soft murmur of wealthy patrons. I straightened immediately, smoothing down my apron. Mr. Ricci didn't tolerate staff loitering, as he called our brief moments of respite, but it wasn't my boss who emerged. It was him. I'd seen him earlier, seated in the private corner booth, the one reserved for special guests. Even without knowing who he was, I could tell he commanded power. It wasn't just the immaculate black suit that looked like it cost more than my yearly salary, or the heavy gold watch that caught the light with every deliberate movement of his wrist. It was something intangible, the way the restaurant staff moved around him with a mixture of deference and fear, the hushed tones used at his table, the subtle nods from other patrons. Now, standing just feet away, I noticed details I'd missed, the way his dark hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place despite the wind. The sharp line of his jaw, covered in designer stubble, the slight scar that ran through his left eyebrow, the only imperfection in an otherwise flawless face. His cologne, expensive and subtle, carried notes of sandalwood and something darker I couldn't name. He was flanked by 2 men in similar suits, though theirs couldn't hide their bulky frames. Bodyguards, unmistakably. One scanned the street with practiced precision while the other murmured something into a sleek black phone. I averted my eyes, knowing better than to stare. Men like him, whoever he was, didn't notice women like me, not unless we spilled something on their designer clothes, or took too long with their orders. Have the car brought around, he said, his voice deep and accented. Italian, but refined, like he'd spent years abroad. And make sure Marco understands I expect him personally tomorrow. The second bodyguard nodded and stepped away to make another call. I should have gone back inside. My break was over, and the bitter cold was making me lightheaded. But something about him held me there, as if the air between us had solidified. He turned then, his gaze sweeping the street until it landed on me. Dark eyes, almost black in the dim light, locked with mine. I couldn't read their expression. Curiosity, annoyance. Whatever it was sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I tried to look away, but my vision suddenly blurred. The street lamp stretched into long ribbons of light, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to tilt. I'd skipped lunch, and breakfast too, leaving what little food I had for Sophia. The dizziness had been coming and going all day, but this time it crashed over me like a wave. My knees buckled. I reached for the wall, fingers scraping against rough brick, but it was too late. I was falling, darkness creeping in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I registered was a sudden movement from his direction and a sharp command in Italian. Then nothing. I came to gradually, first aware of warmth, then of motion. My eyes fluttered open to find myself surrounded by soft leather. A car, no, a luxury SUV, with tinted windows and the soft purr of an expensive engine, and arms, strong arms cradling me against a solid chest, the scent of that sandalwood cologne now surrounding me. Panic jolted through me and I tried to sit up. Be still. That same voice, closer now, resonating through his chest and into mine. You fainted. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my head. I was practically in his lap, one of his arms supporting my back, the other resting lightly on my knee. The bodyguard was driving, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror. I'm sorry, I stammered, mortification heating my cheeks. Please, I need to go back. My shift is over, he finished. Your manager has been informed of your situation. The way he said it made it sound like I'd done something wrong, or perhaps like Mr. Ricci had. My daughter, I whispered, real fear replacing embarrassment. I need to get home to my daughter. Something in his expression changed then. A subtle shift I couldn't decipher. The babysitter? My neighbor, Mrs. Petrovich. She'll be expecting me. She has to leave for her night job by... I glanced at the sleek dashboard clock and gasped. 20 minutes ago. Oh God. I tried again to move, but his arm remained firmly around me, and the car showed no signs of stopping. Address? He asked simply. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed against giving this stranger, this powerful, dangerous-feeling stranger, my home address. But what choice did I have? I was already in his car, already vulnerable. Monroe Heights, Building C, Apartment 304. I said quietly. He nodded to the driver, who made a smooth turn at the next intersection. I don't understand, I said, finding my voice again. Why am I here? He studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. You collapsed. You need medical attention. I just forgot to eat today. I'm fine, really. The last thing I needed was a hospital bill I couldn't pay. When did you last eat? The question was direct, his tone making it clear he expected an answer. Yesterday. Dinner. I admitted reluctantly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Your name? Maya. Maya Collins. Maya. The way he said it, rolling the syllables with his accent, made it sound like a different name altogether. I am Alessio Vitale. The name meant nothing to me, but he said it as if it should, as if everyone should know who Alessio Vitale was. Thank you for helping me, Mr. Vitale, but really I just need to get home to my daughter. We are taking you home, he said, and then you will eat. It wasn't a suggestion. Despite his polite tone, it was unmistakably a command. I opened my mouth to protest, but was silenced by a look. Those dark eyes held something I couldn't interpret. Concern, perhaps, but also something harder, a man accustomed to being obeyed. The car pulled up to my building, a dilapidated 5-story walk-up that looked even shabbier next to the gleaming black SUV. I felt a flush of shame, then anger at myself for feeling ashamed. This was the best home I could provide for Sophia on a waitress's salary, after her father had cleaned out our accounts and disappeared. Apartment 304, I reminded him, expecting to be released. Instead, Alessio opened his door and stepped out, effortlessly bringing me with him. Before I could protest, he was carrying me toward the entrance, the bodyguard falling into step behind us. I can walk, I insisted. I'm sure you can, he replied without slowing, but you won't. The second bodyguard appeared from nowhere, opening the building door before we reached it. How had he known which building? Had they been watching? The thought sent another chill through me. Maya! Mrs. Petrovich's voice called as we entered the dimly lit lobby. The elderly woman was coming down the stairs, her worn coat already on, worry creasing her face. She froze at the sight of us, or rather at the sight of the imposing man carrying me, flanked by 2 obvious security personnel. I'm okay, I called quickly. I just felt a little faint after work. Her eyes darted from me to Alessio and back, suspicion warring with the need to get to her night shift cleaning offices downtown. Sophia's asleep, she said cautiously. Who is... a friend? Alessio cut in smoothly, his voice somehow both gentle and brooking no argument. Thank you for watching her daughter. My driver will take you to your workplace tonight. He nodded to the bodyguard who had opened the door, who stepped forward and respectfully gestured toward the waiting SUV. Mrs. Petrovich looked startled, then calculating. The bus she usually took involved 2 transfers and took nearly an hour. That's very kind, she said slowly, still watching me with concern. It's okay, I assured her, though I wasn't at all sure it was. Thank you for staying late. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded and followed the bodyguard out. The remaining man, the driver, now took the lead, moving ahead of us up the stairs, 3 flights with no elevator, but Alessio showed no strain as he carried me, his breathing steady against my side. At my door, I fumbled in my pocket for keys, increasingly aware of the surreal nature of the situation. The driver took them from my trembling fingers and opened the door, immediately stepping inside to... What, check for threats? In my tiny apartment? Wait, I said, finding my voice again as Alessio carried me over the threshold. This is... You can't just... Mommy? A small voice called from the short hallway that led to our single bedroom. Sophia stood in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, dark curls tousled from sleep. At 4 years old, she was tiny for her age, all huge brown eyes and delicate features. My heart, my whole world. Alessio's arms tightened around me for a fraction of a second before he gently set me down. I swayed slightly but caught myself against the wall. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "You should be asleep." I heard voices. Her eyes widened as she took in the strangers in our apartment. "Are you sick, Mommy?" "No, baby, just tired." I moved to her, kneeling down despite my lightheadedness. "This is Mr. Vitale. He gave Mommy a ride home from work." Sophia regarded Alessio with open curiosity. Children that age hadn't yet learned to sense danger, to recognize power and the threat it could pose. She just saw a tall man in a nice suit who had helped her mother. "Thank you for bringing my mommy home," she said with the solemn politeness I'd tried to instill in her. Something flickered across Alessio's face. An expression so brief, I almost missed it. Softness? Pain? Whatever it was vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a careful neutrality. "It was my pleasure," he replied, his deep voice gentled. He turned to the driver. "The packages from the car." The man nodded and disappeared back down the stairs. I frowned, confused, as I guided Sophia back toward the bedroom. "You should go back to sleep," I told her. "It's very late." "But I'm hungry," she said, the guileless admission twisting my heart. I'd left her dinner, but it hadn't been enough. It was never enough. "I'll fix you a snack," I promised, though I knew our kitchen held little beyond some crackers and peanut butter. "That won't be necessary." Alessio's voice came from behind me as the driver returned, his arms laden with bags. "Dinner has arrived." The driver set the bags on our small kitchen counter and began unpacking containers. Dozens of them, filled with pasta, bread, salads, and meats from Ricci's. The rich aromas filled our tiny apartment, and Sophia's eyes grew wide. "For us?" she whispered, looking between me and the food in disbelief. I turned to Alessio, finding him watching us with an unreadable expression. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he removed his suit jacket and laid it precisely over the back of my worn couch, then rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, revealing strong forearms and a glimpse of a tattoo, something in black ink that disappeared beneath the fabric. "You need to eat," he said finally. "Both of you." He moved to the kitchen, opening cabinets until he found plates, mismatched yard sale finds that looked absurdly inadequate next to the gourmet food. "And then we need to talk, Maya Collins." The way he said my name sent another shiver through me, not entirely from fear. There was something else taking root alongside my apprehension, something I didn't want to examine too closely. As he began arranging food on plates, looking bizarrely domestic in my shabby kitchen, Sophia tugged at my hand. "Mommy," she whispered, eyes shining with excitement. "Is he a prince?" The driver, overhearing, made a noise that might have been a hastily suppressed laugh. Alessio's mouth curved into the ghost of a smile, the first I'd seen, revealing a flash of white teeth and a hint of warmth in those dark eyes. "No, sweetheart," I said quietly, watching this dangerous man handle my discount plates with careful precision. "Not a prince. Something far more dangerous," whispered a voice in my head. "Something that should make you gather your daughter and run, not stand here wondering what his genuine smile might look like." But I was too weak, too tired, and suddenly too hungry to run anywhere. And as Alessio turned and handed my daughter a plate of pasta that made her eyes light up with delight, I had the terrible feeling that running wouldn't matter anyway. Whatever Alessio Vitale wanted, he was clearly accustomed to getting. And for reasons I couldn't begin to understand, what he seemed to want right now was us. I watched Sophia devour her pasta with the single-minded focus only a hungry child could muster. Alessio had given her the smallest portions of everything: pasta with a light cream sauce, a few meatballs, bread, and salad, all carefully cut into manageable pieces. The thoughtfulness of this gesture unsettled me more than his commanding presence in our apartment. Dangerous men weren't supposed to know how to serve dinner to 4-year-olds. "Eat," Alessio said, pushing a plate toward me where I sat rigid at our small kitchen table. Unlike Sophia's, my plate was piled high with food, too much for my shrunken stomach. When I hesitated, his eyes narrowed slightly. "You need strength." I took a bite of garlic bread, then another. The rich, buttery taste awakened a hunger I'd been suppressing for too long. Soon, I was eating with almost as much enthusiasm as Sophia, though I tried to maintain some dignity under Alessio's watchful gaze. His driver, whose name I still didn't know, had positioned himself by the door after declining food. Occasionally he checked his phone, his face impassive. Alessio himself ate little, instead watching us with an intensity that should have killed my appetite but somehow didn't. "Why are you really here?" I finally asked, setting down my fork. Sophia had finished eating and was now fighting to keep her eyes open, her head nodding forward then jerking back up. Instead of answering, Alessio rose and approached my daughter. I tensed, but he only knelt to her eye level, his movements deliberately slow. "You should sleep now, Piccola," he said softly. "Growing children need rest after eating." Sophia regarded him solemnly, then looked to me for confirmation. I nodded, rising to take her hand. "I'll tuck you in," I said, not wanting this stranger, no matter how helpful he'd been, involved in our bedtime routine. "I want him to tell me a story," Sophia said, pointing at Alessio with the directness only children possess. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Sophia, Mr. Vitale is busy, and it's very late." "What kind of story would you like?" Alessio interrupted, surprising me. His tone with Sophia was different, gentler, with a patience I wouldn't have expected from a man who radiated such authority. "A princess story," she said immediately, "but not a boring one where she just waits. One where she fights dragons." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I think I can manage that." I stood frozen as my daughter took this imposing man's hand and led him toward our bedroom. Every maternal instinct screamed to intervene, yet nothing about his behavior had suggested he meant her harm. Quite the opposite. I followed them, hovering in the doorway as Sophia climbed into her small bed, really just a mattress on the floor in the corner of the room we shared. Our bedroom held my second-hand queen bed, a single dresser with missing knobs, and a collection of cardboard boxes serving as Sophia's toy storage. The contrast between Alessio's obvious wealth and our poverty had never been starker. To his credit, he showed no reaction to our living conditions. He simply sat on the edge of my bed, his posture somehow still commanding despite the humble setting. "Once there was a princess," he began, his accented voice dropping to a storytelling cadence, "who lived in a small castle at the edge of a great forest." As he spun a tale about a clever princess who outwitted dragons through kindness rather than violence, I watched my daughter's eyes grow heavy. Within minutes, she was asleep, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Alessio fell silent, looking at her with an expression I couldn't decipher. "You're good at that," I said softly, surprised. "I had a little sister once," he replied, rising from the bed in a fluid motion. The past tense hung in the air between us, but I knew better than to ask. I pulled Sophia's thin blanket up to her chin and followed Alessio back to the living room, closing the bedroom door partway behind us. The driver was still at his post, but Alessio dismissed him with a subtle nod. "I'll call when needed, boss," the man said, letting himself out. Alone with Alessio, the smallness of my apartment became suffocating. He took up too much space, not physically, but with his presence, his energy, his unmistakable power. "Now," he said, returning to his seat at the kitchen table. "We talk." I sat across from him, mustering what little strength I had left. "I appreciate your help tonight, and the food. But I don't understand what you want from me." His dark eyes studied me with unsettling intensity. "Tell me about Sophia's father." The question caught me off guard. What does he have to do with anything? Everything, perhaps. Alessio's fingers tapped once, twice on the table. His name. It wasn't a request. Despite my confusion, I answered, "Daniel Reeves." "But he's been gone for nearly 2 years. He took our savings and disappeared. He left you alone with a child and no money." His tone made it a statement, not a question, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Yes." "Look, I don't see how this Daniel Reeves is not his real name," Alessio interrupted. "The man you knew as your husband is Davide Rossi, cousin to Carlo Rossi. Do these names mean anything to you?" I shook my head, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "No. Daniel was... He said he was a financial consultant. We met when I was in college. After Sophia was born, things changed. He became secretive, started disappearing for days, then one day he was just gone." Alessio's jaw tightened. "Davide Rossi is a thief. Not just of your money, which is unforgivable enough, but of something far more valuable belonging to my family. He has been hiding for almost 2 years. But recently he resurfaced. When my men tracked him, they discovered his connection to you. I don't know anything about whatever he stole, I said quickly, fear spiraling through me. I haven't heard from him since he left. I believe you. Alessio's voice was surprisingly gentle. You are as much his victim as... He stopped himself. But your daughter is his blood. The implication hung in the air, terrible and clear. My heart began to race, and I rose from my chair, moving instinctively toward the bedroom where Sophia slept. If you're suggesting that I would give her up, or use her to find him. Sit down, Maya. Though softly spoken, the command froze me in place. I have no intention of harming your daughter, or you. Then what do you want? Alessio was silent for a moment, contemplating. The Rossi family and mine have been enemies for generations. Blood has been spilled on both sides. What David took was a family heirloom. Valuable, yes. But more importantly, it belonged to my mother. I have been searching for him for a long time. And now you've found me instead, I said bitterly. I'm sorry about your heirloom, but we have nothing. Whatever Daniel Davide stole, it's not here. I know. Alessio's gaze swept around the apartment. But Davide Rossi is a sentimental man for all his faults. My sources tell me he has been watching you from a distance. He still cares for his daughter, even if he abandoned her. The thought of Daniel, Davide, watching us made my skin crawl. You want to use us as bait, protection, he corrected. I am offering you my protection. I laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. Protection from what? I don't need... You fainted from hunger tonight. Alessio cut in, his voice hardening. Your daughter asked for food in the middle of the night. Your apartment building has had 3 break-ins this month alone. The neighborhood is controlled by street gangs. And somewhere out there, the cousin of a vindictive crime family is watching your every move. His eyes locked with mine. Yes, Maya Collins. You need protection. Crime family. The words echoed in my head, confirming what I'd suspected, but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. This man, with his bespoke suit and commanding presence, was connected to the mafia. And my ex-husband, apparently, was connected to a rival family. I felt sick. What exactly are you proposing? You and Sophia will come stay at my estate. You will be given everything you need, food, clothing, security. In return, you continue your normal routine. You go to work, take Sophia to her daycare. Live your life, but under my watchful eye. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Then I leave tonight, and you continue struggling alone. But know this, if Davide contacts you, if he tries to see his daughter, the Rossi family will not be far behind. And they will not be as considerate as I have been. The threat was implicit but clear. Whatever game was being played between these families, Sophia and I were now pawns. If Alessio left, we'd lose his protection, but remain targets. How long? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. Until Davide is found, until what was taken is returned. And then what happens to him? I shouldn't care, after what he'd done to us. But once, I had loved him. Alessio's silence was answer enough. I looked toward the bedroom door, thinking of my sleeping daughter, of her hungry eyes lighting up at the sight of food tonight, of the constant struggle just to keep a roof over our heads, of the fear I lived with daily, wondering when we'd finally hit bottom. If we come with you, I said slowly, I need your word that Sophia will be safe, that she'll never know any of this. Who her father really is, who you really are. She deserves a childhood untainted by all of this. Something shifted in Alessio's expression. Respect, perhaps, or understanding. You have my word. No harm will come to Sophia under my protection. And she will know only what a child should know. When would we leave? Tonight. Now. Pack what you need for a few days. The rest can be gathered later. I thought of Mrs. Petrovich, of my job at Ricci's, of Sophia's few friends at daycare. I can't just disappear. People will ask questions. Your neighbor already knows you've made a new friend who's helping you through a difficult time, Alessio said with the barest hint of a smile. As for your job, Ricci's has just given you a paid leave of absence. Health reasons. The casual way he spoke of rearranging our lives sent a chill down my spine. You've already set this up. Before you even spoke to me, he didn't deny it. I prepare for all possibilities, including the possibility that I wouldn't have a choice, I thought bitterly. But hadn't that been true before he entered my life? Had I ever really had choices, struggling paycheck to paycheck, abandoned with a young child? I'll need to pack Sophia's favorite things, I said finally. Her rabbit, her blanket, some books. Alessio nodded once, satisfaction evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. He'd won, and he knew it. Take what will comfort her. Everything else can be replaced. I rose on unsteady legs and moved toward the bedroom, feeling his eyes on me every step. At the door, I paused and looked back. You never did tell me who you really are, Mr. Vitale. His eyes held mine, dark and unreadable. You know enough for now, Maya. The less you know beyond that, the safer you and Sophia will be. As I turned to pack, choosing which pieces of our small life to take into this unknown future, I wondered if I'd made a deal with the devil. But looking at my sleeping daughter, peaceful, fed, for once not worried about tomorrow, I knew I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. For her, I would walk into the lion's den. For her, I would face whatever dangers awaited in Alessio Vitale's world, and maybe, whispered a treacherous voice in my mind, for myself too. Dawn was breaking as Alessio's convoy of black SUVs wound through iron gates and up a long, tree-lined driveway. Sophia slept against my shoulder, her beloved stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her small hands. I'd managed to stay awake during the hour-long drive, watching as city streets gave way to affluent suburbs, then to what could only be described as estate country. Alessio sat across from us, occasionally speaking in rapid Italian into his phone, his voice low to avoid waking Sophia. 2 bodyguards, including the driver from earlier, flanked us, while a second vehicle followed behind with what I assumed was more security. The house that emerged from the morning mist stole what little breath I had left. House was an understatement. It was a modern mansion, all clean lines of stone and glass, sprawling across manicured grounds with the precision of an architectural magazine feature. Security was evident everywhere. Cameras mounted discreetly, men patrolling the perimeter, a guardhouse at the entrance. This is where you live? I whispered, unable to keep the awe from my voice. Alessio glanced at me, something unreadable in his dark eyes. One of my residences. It's the most secure. The most secure. Not the most comfortable, or the most convenient. Security was the priority. Another reminder of the world I'd just stepped into. The SUV stopped at the front entrance, where a woman in a simple black dress waited. Alessio exited first, spoke briefly to one of the guards, then opened our door. I stepped out carefully, trying not to jostle Sophia. This is Mrs. Abelli, my housekeeper, Alessio said, indicating the woman who approached with a respectful nod. Despite being probably in her 60s, she stood straight-backed and alert, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun. Welcome, Miss Collins, she said in accented English. The young Mrs. room is prepared, as is yours. I nodded, uncertain of the proper response. Thank you. Mrs. Abelli will show you to your rooms, Alessio said. Sophia should rest properly. You as well. There was no room for argument in his tone, though I hadn't planned to offer one. The events of the night had left me bone-weary, and the thought of a bed, any bed, was appealing. And you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Something that might have been surprise flickered across his face. I have business to attend to. We'll speak later, once you've rested. With that, he turned and walked away, 2 guards falling into step behind him. I watched him disappear through massive double doors, leaving me alone with Mrs. Abelli and my sleeping daughter. This way, please, the housekeeper said, leading me into the house. The interior was as impressive as the exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, art that looked museum-worthy hanging on the walls. Yet despite its grandeur, there was a warmth to the place I hadn't expected. Soft rugs, comfortable-looking furniture, vases of fresh flowers. We ascended a sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor, then down a hallway to a set of double doors. Mrs. Abelli opened them to reveal a suite that took my breath away. The nursery is through there, she said, indicating a door to the right. Your room connects to it. Mr. Vitale was most specific about the arrangements. I stepped inside, taking in the elegant sitting area with plush couches, a fireplace already lit against the morning chill, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking immaculate gardens. Double doors led to a bedroom with the largest bed I'd ever seen, dressed in crisp white linens and a cloud-like duvet. "The nursery?" I asked, confused. "Mrs. Abeli led me through another door into what could only be described as a child's paradise. A canopy bed with pink and white drapings dominated one wall, surrounded by shelves filled with toys and books. A play area with a miniature table and chairs, a dollhouse taller than Sophia herself, and a reading nook with beanbag chairs completed the fantasy. "When did he have time to arrange all this?" I whispered, genuinely stunned. "Mr. Vitale is very efficient." "Mrs. No," Abeli replied, with what might have been a hint of amusement. "Will you need help settling the little one?" I shook my head, still trying to process the opulence surrounding us. "No, thank you. I can manage." The housekeeper nodded. "Fresh clothes are in the dressers and closets. I took the liberty of estimating sizes. If anything doesn't fit, please let me know. Breakfast will be ready whenever you wake." With another respectful nod, she left, closing the main doors behind her. I stood in the middle of the nursery, holding my sleeping daughter, feeling wildly out of place. Gently, I laid Sophia on the bed, removed her shoes, and tucked her rabbit beside her. She stirred briefly, but didn't wake, exhausted from our midnight adventure. In my own room, I found the closet filled with designer clothing in exactly my size. Dresses, pants, blouses, even sleepwear and undergarments with tags still attached. The bathroom was equally luxurious, with a shower large enough for 4 people and a soaking tub beside a window with privacy glass. I should have been delighted, or at least grateful. Instead, a cold knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. The speed and thoroughness with which Alessio had prepared for our arrival suggested planning far beyond our midnight encounter. How long had he been watching us? What else did he know about our lives? Despite my racing thoughts, exhaustion won out. I showered quickly, pulled on silk pajamas that probably cost more than a month's rent at our apartment, and fell into the cloud-like bed. My last thought before sleep claimed me was that I might have just made the biggest mistake of my life, or saved myself and Sophia from a fate worse than anything I could imagine. I woke to Sophia's small hands patting my cheeks. Mommy, wake up! We're in a castle." I blinked, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Sunlight streamed through partially opened curtains, suggesting it was well into the day. Sophia was already dressed in a pretty blue dress I'd never seen before, her curls neatly brushed. "Who helped you dress?" I asked, sitting up groggily. "The nice lady with the white hair. She said you were sleeping because you were tired, so she helped me." "Mommy, there are so many toys, and books, and she made me pancakes with strawberries on top." Sophia's eyes were wide with excitement, her earlier fear of strangers apparently forgotten in the face of such wonders. I glanced at the bedside clock, 2:17 p.m. I'd slept for nearly 8 hours. "Why didn't you wake me earlier?" I asked, alarmed that I'd been unconscious while my daughter wandered a strange house. "Mr. Alessio said not to," Sophia replied simply. "He said growing mommies need sleep too." "You've seen Mr. Alessio today?" She nodded enthusiastically. "He showed me the gardens. There's a fountain with fish and a swing. Can we go see them again? Please, Mommy?" I pushed back the covers, trying to process this information. While I'd been sleeping, my daughter had been with Alessio Vitale, a man who, for all his apparent kindness toward us, was clearly dangerous. "Let me get dressed first," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Then we'll go explore together." Sophia nodded, skipping back to her new wonderland of a room. I dressed quickly in jeans and a simple blouse from the provided wardrobe, marveling despite myself at how perfectly everything fit. After brushing my teeth and running a comb through my hair, I followed Sophia's excited chatter into her room. "Look at all the books, Mommy, and this dollhouse has tiny furniture that really works." Her joy was infectious, momentarily pushing aside my concerns. I hadn't seen her this animated in months, perhaps longer. The weight of our precarious existence had affected her more than I'd allowed myself to acknowledge. "It's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, kneeling beside her. "But remember, these things belong to Mr. Vitale. We're just visiting." Sophia's brow furrowed. "But the lady said this is my room now. And look," she ran to the bookshelf and pulled down a picture book. "This has my name in it." Sure enough, the inside cover bore a bookplate with Sophia Collins Library, printed in elegant script. A chill ran down my spine. The personalization suggested a permanence to our arrangement that I hadn't agreed to. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Abelli stood there with a tray. "I thought you might prefer to eat here," she said, setting the tray on a small table. It held a pot of coffee, orange juice, and an assortment of pastries and fruit. "Mr. Vitale would like to see you when you're ready. Sophia is welcome to stay with me in the kitchen. I'm making cookies this afternoon." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Can I, Mommy? Please?" I hesitated, torn between keeping her close and allowing her this simple pleasure. "That's very kind, Mrs. Abelli. Perhaps for a little while." The housekeeper smiled, a genuine expression that softened her stern features. "Take your time with breakfast. Mr. Vitale is in his study. The first floor, east wing. Antonio will show you when you're ready." After she left with an excited Sophia, I ate quickly, the rich pastries and perfect coffee doing little to settle my nerves. Outside the window, I could see part of the grounds. Immaculate gardens, a tennis court in the distance, and the fountain Sophia had mentioned. Armed guards patrolled discreetly along the perimeter. A gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. Antonio, who turned out to be one of the bodyguards from the previous night, was waiting in the hallway when I emerged. He led me silently through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors to a set of heavy wooden doors. He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for a response. Alessio's study was exactly what I would have expected. Leather-bound books lining the walls, a massive desk of dark wood, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds. Alessio himself stood with his back to the door, speaking in rapid Italian on a phone. He wore a tailored suit, dark gray today, his posture rigid with what looked like tension. He turned at our entrance, his eyes meeting mine. Something in his expression shifted, softened perhaps, before he said a few curt words into the phone and ended the call. "Maya," he said, gesturing toward a leather chair opposite his desk. "You slept well?" 8 hours, I replied, taking the offered seat. "I never sleep that long. Your body needed it." He sat behind his desk, his movements precise and controlled. "And Sophia, she is comfortable?" "She thinks she's in a fairy tale castle," I said, unable to keep a hint of accusation from my voice. "With personalized books and a dollhouse worth more than everything we owned in our apartment." If he noticed my tone, he didn't acknowledge it. Children adapt quickly. It's good that she's happy. "Mr. Vitale." "Alessio," he interrupted. "If we are to live under the same roof, formality seems unnecessary." "Alessio," I conceded. "I appreciate everything you've done for us. The food, the clothes, this place. It's overwhelming, but I need to understand what happens next. How long will we be here? What exactly do you expect from me?" He regarded me steadily, his dark eyes unreadable. "You will stay until David is found. As for what I expect, nothing beyond what I've already stated. You continue your normal routine, under my protection. My normal routine doesn't include living in a mansion with armed guards." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps not the guards or the mansion, but the rest can remain unchanged. You will return to work at Ricci's when your health leave ends. Sophia will attend her daycare. The only difference is that my men will drive you, and you will return here each night. And in exchange, I'm bait for my ex-husband." His expression hardened. "You are under my protection. There is a difference." "Is there?" I challenged, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "You're using me, us, to draw him out." "Yes," he acknowledged, surprising me with his candor. "But I am also keeping you safe from the Rossi family, who would not hesitate to use more direct methods to locate Davide." The implication hung heavy in the air. Whatever game Alessio was playing, it was preferable to the alternative. "There's something you're not telling me," I said, studying his impassive face. "This isn't just about an heirloom, is it? Whatever David stole, it's more important than you're letting on." For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. "What he took belonged to my mother. A necklace passed down through generations of my family. Its monetary value is significant, yes, but its true worth lies in what it represents." "And what's that?" "Legitimacy. Authority." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My position as head of my family." There it was, the confirmation of what I'd suspected, not just connected to the mafia, but a leader within it. The realization should have terrified me, but instead, it brought a strange clarity. The power he emanated, the deference shown by everyone around him, the security measures. It all made sense now. "I see," I said quietly. "And if this necklace isn't recovered?" "It will be," he stated with absolute certainty, one way or another. The threat in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, not for myself or Sophia, but for the man I'd once loved. Whatever his crimes, Daniel Davide had no idea what he'd unleashed by crossing Alessio Vitale. "Now," Alessio said, his tone softening slightly. "Do you have any other questions?" A dozen raced through my mind, but one pushed forward. "Why did you help Sophia get dressed this morning? Why show her the gardens yourself? Surely you have staff for that." Something flickered across his face. So brief, I nearly missed it. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "Children should not suffer for the sins of their fathers," he said finally. "Sophia is innocent in all this. And she reminds me..." He stopped, then continued more carefully. "She deserves kindness." The unfinished thought hung in the air between us. "She reminds me of someone." "Who?" His sister mentioned in past tense? Someone else? Before I could ask, the study door opened, and one of his men entered, speaking rapidly in Italian. Alessio's expression changed instantly, hardening into something cold and dangerous. He replied with a series of sharp commands, then turned back to me. "We will continue this conversation later. Antonio will escort you back to Sophia." His tone made it clear the meeting was over. As I followed Antonio back through the mansion, I found myself wondering about the man behind the power. There were layers to Alessio Vitale that didn't align with my image of a mafia boss. His gentleness with Sophia, the flash of pain when speaking of children, the careful way he'd carried me when I was weak. "Dangerous thoughts," whispered the voice of self-preservation. "Remember what he is. Remember why you're here." But as I rounded a corner and heard Sophia's delighted laughter drifting from the kitchen, another thought surfaced, unbidden and unwelcome. In all the years since Sophia's birth, struggling alone, when had anyone ever offered us protection instead of exploitation? When had anyone seen our vulnerability and responded with anything but indifference or predation? "Never," came the uncomfortable answer. Not until Alessio Vitale had found me fainting in the cold. Days at Alessio's estate fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected. Breakfast with Sophia in the sunlit kitchen, where Mrs. Abelli always had something special prepared. Mornings spent exploring the grounds under the watchful eyes of security. Afternoons filled with Sophia's delight at each new discovery. After a week, my health leave ended, and I returned to Ricci's, driven in a luxury SUV with tinted windows, security personnel never far away. Mr. Ricci, once demanding and critical, now treated me with uncomfortable deference. The other staff whispered behind their hands when I passed. I heard fragments, "Vitale's woman," and caught herself a big fish, that made my cheeks burn with equal parts embarrassment and indignation. I wasn't Alessio's woman. I was his... what? Guest? Asset? Bait? The uncertainty of my position gnawed at me, especially because I rarely saw him. He was frequently away on business, returning late at night or disappearing for days. When he was home, he often worked in his study until the early hours, though he always made time for Sophia, listening to her excited chatter about daycare or reading her bedtime stories with a patience that continuously surprised me. With me, he maintained a polite distance, asking about my day, ensuring we had everything we needed, but revealing little of himself. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, his dark eyes unreadable. It was during the third week, as autumn gave way to winter's first chill, that our careful dynamic shifted. I was sitting in the library after putting Sophia to bed, a glass of wine in hand, staring out at the gardens now silvered by moonlight. The massive room, with its towering shelves and reading nooks, had become my refuge. Tonight, with rain pattering against the windows and a fire crackling in the hearth, it felt especially cozy. "Trouble sleeping?" Alessio's voice came from the doorway, startling me. He stood there in what passed for casual clothing in his world, dark trousers and a black sweater that looked cashmere, the sleeves pushed up to reveal strong forearms and that tantalizing glimpse of tattoo. Without his usual suit, he seemed somehow more approachable, though no less powerful. "Just enjoying the quiet," I replied, gesturing to the book in my lap. "Your library is impressive." He moved into the room, pouring himself a drink from the crystal decanter on a side table. My father believed education was power. Books were the one indulgence he permitted, without question. It was the first personal detail he'd shared willingly. I seized the opportunity. And what did your mother believe in? A shadow crossed his face, but he answered. Beauty. Loyalty. Family above all else. He took a seat in the leather chair opposite mine, the fire casting his sharp features in warm light and deep shadow. You remind me of her sometimes. The comparison startled me. How so? The way you are with Sophia, protective, as though you would burn down the world before letting harm come to her. He sipped his drink, his eyes never leaving mine. My mother was the same. Was? I ventured cautiously. She died when I was 15, cancer. His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes shifted, an old pain, never fully healed. The necklace David stole was hers. The last thing she gave me before she died. Understanding bloomed. This wasn't just about a valuable heirloom or a symbol of power. It was personal. Deeply, painfully personal. I'm sorry, I said softly. He acknowledged this with a slight nod. You have not asked about him. Davide, I set down my wineglass. Would you tell me if I did? Perhaps. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. What would you like to know? Have you found him? The question had burned within me for weeks. Not yet. But we are close. His expression hardened. He was seen in Montreal last week. Canada, I murmured, thinking of the man I'd known as Daniel. His casual mentions of skiing trips north, his collection of maple syrup bottles from different provinces. Had there been clues all along? What will happen when you find him? Alessio studied me, as if weighing how much truth I could bear. That depends on him. If he returns what was taken, willingly provides information about the Rossi family's operations, he might survive. If not, he left the sentence unfinished. And after? I pressed. When this is over, when you have your necklace back, what happens to Sophia and me? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. I realized with startling clarity that I was afraid of the answer, not because I feared returning to our old life, but because part of me didn't want to leave this strange new one. What would you like to happen, Maya? His voice had softened, the accent wrapping around my name in a way that sent warmth spreading through my chest. I don't know, I answered honestly. Going back to our apartment, to struggling paycheck to paycheck. Sophia's been so happy here. She's thriving. But this isn't our world. We don't belong in a place like this. Don't you? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You've adapted remarkably well for someone who doesn't belong. The staff respects you. My associates find you intelligent and discreet. Sophia has brought life to rooms that have been silent for too long. His words stirred something dangerous within me. Hope, perhaps, or a longing I couldn't afford to acknowledge. Your associates, I repeated, forcing myself back to reality. You mean the other mafia families? The people who come here for meetings behind closed doors. The reason there are armed guards patrolling the grounds. That's your world, Alessio, not mine. And yet here you are, in the heart of it. His dark eyes held mine, challenging. Not running, not afraid. I'm terrified, I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. Every day, I wonder if I've made a terrible mistake bringing Sophia into this, if I'm no better than Daniel, David, putting her at risk because of my own choices. Alessio set his glass down and moved to kneel before my chair, bringing his face level with mine. This close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, smell the subtle cologne that had become so familiar. You are nothing like him, he said, his voice low and intense. He abandoned his child. You would die for her. Everything you have done, including coming here, has been to protect her. His nearness was intoxicating, breaking down defenses I'd built carefully over weeks. And you, I whispered. Why have you done all this? The clothes, the toys, the kindness to a child who isn't yours. It can't just be about finding Davide. Something shifted in his expression. Vulnerability, perhaps, or decision. At first, yes. You were a means to an end, but now... His hand rose, hesitating a moment before gently brushing a strand of hair from my face. The simple touch sent electricity through me. Now, I find myself looking for excuses to delay finding him, he confessed. Because when this ends, you might choose to leave, and I discover I do not want that. My heart thundered in my chest. What are you saying, Alessio? That you have become more than a means to an end, Maya Collins. You and Sophia both. His thumb traced the line of my cheek, featherlight. I am not a good man. I have done things that would horrify you. My world is dangerous, yes. But within it, I can offer you both protection, security, a life where Sophia never goes hungry again, where you never have to choose between paying rent and buying food. At what cost? I whispered, even as I found myself leaning into his touch. Loyalty, he answered simply. Trust. And perhaps in time, something more. The air between us crackled with tension, desire, fear, possibility. I knew I stood at a crossroads. The reasonable choice was to pull away, to remind both of us why I was really here, to maintain the careful distance that had protected my heart these past weeks. Instead, I closed the gap between us. His lips met mine with surprising gentleness, a question rather than a demand. When I didn't pull away, his hand slipped to the nape of my neck, drawing me closer. The kiss deepened, igniting something that had been building since that first night, a hunger that had nothing to do with food and everything to do with the man before me. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Alessio rested his forehead against mine. We should stop, he murmured, though his hand still cradled my face. We should, I agreed, making no move to pull away. A sound from the doorway shattered the moment, a small gasp, followed by the patter of retreating feet, Sophia. I pulled back immediately, rising to follow her. Alessio caught my hand. Let me come with you. She might be confused. Together we found her back in bed, pretending to be asleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly to her chest. I sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her curls. Sophia, sweetheart, I know you're awake. She peeked one eye open. Is Mr. Alessio your boyfriend now? She asked with the directness only children possess. I felt heat rush to my cheeks. It's complicated, sweetheart. Alessio sat on the other side of her bed. Sophia, he said gently, how would you feel if your mother and I became closer friends? She considered this with adorable seriousness. Would you still read me stories every night you want? He promised. And would we still live in the castle? For as long as you both wish to stay. Her small face brightened. Then it's okay. She yawned, the excitement of discovery fading into genuine sleepiness. I like it here. Mommy smiles more. As she drifted off, her innocent observation hung in the air between Alessio and me. It was true. Despite the circumstances, despite the danger and uncertainty, I had been happier here than I'd been in years. Alessio's hand found mine in the dim light of Sophia's room. We have much to discuss, he said softly, but not tonight. I nodded, knowing he was right. Whatever was happening between us, whatever impossible future might be forming, it deserved careful consideration. For Sophia's sake, for my own. But as I looked at him in the gentle glow of the nightlight, his usual hardness softened by the presence of a sleeping child, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. I was falling for Alessio Vitale, a man who by his own admission was dangerous, powerful, and decidedly not good. A man who, against all odds and reason, seemed to be falling for me too. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains as I carefully extricated myself from Alessio's embrace, sliding out of the bed we'd been sharing for the past 2 weeks. He stirred slightly but didn't wake, his usual vigilance softened by sleep. In these unguarded moments, with the hardness gone from his face and his dark hair tousled, he looked almost innocent. A deceptive impression I knew better than to trust. I pulled on a silk robe and padded to the window, looking out over the estate grounds glittering with early frost. Armed men still patrolled the perimeter, a constant reminder of the world we inhabited. Alessio and I had progressed quickly after that night in the library. Too quickly, perhaps, but with an intensity that felt inevitable. He'd moved me from my guest suite to his master bedroom within days, though we maintained separate appearances around Sophia. She knew something had changed, children always do, but seemed delighted, rather than confused. You're thinking too loudly. Alessio's sleep-roughened voice came from behind me. I turned to find him watching me, propped up on one elbow. Just planning the day. Sophia has that play date with her friend from daycare. I need to make sure everything's ready. He saw through the deflection easily. That's not what's troubling you. He sat up, the sheets pooling around his waist, revealing the intricate tattoos that covered his chest and arms, symbols of his family, his position, his past. Tell me. I sighed, returning to sit on the edge of the bed. It's been 5 weeks, Alessio. We can't live in this bubble forever. Sooner or later, reality will intrude. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm. This is reality, Maya. Us, here, now. Is it? We're playing house while your men hunt down my ex-husband, while rival families potentially plot against you. I met his gaze steadily. What happens when they find David? What happens to us then? Alessio was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he rose, pulling on a pair of pants, before moving to a painting on the wall, a seascape I'd always admired. He swung it aside, revealing a concealed safe, and entered a combination with practiced ease. I've been meaning to show you this, he said, retrieving something from inside. He returned to the bed and placed a small velvet box in my hand. Open it. Inside lay a necklace that took my breath away, a teardrop emerald surrounded by diamonds, hanging from a platinum chain. Even to my untrained eye, it was clearly an heirloom, valuable beyond measure. Is this my mother's necklace? He confirmed. The one Davide stole. I stared at him in confusion, but I thought it was recovered 3 weeks ago. My men found Davide in Montreal, as I told you, and persuaded him to return what he'd taken. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. 3 weeks? And you didn't tell me? Alessio took the box gently from my hands and returned the necklace to the safe. I needed to be sure. Sure of what? That he wasn't lying? That the necklace was real? Sure of you. He turned to face me, his expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. Of us. That what was growing between us wasn't merely circumstance or proximity or gratitude. Anger flared, hot and unexpected. So you've been testing me? Waiting to see if I'd still be interested in you without the pretense of needing protection? I stood, putting distance between us. What about Sophia? Have we been living in danger for no reason these past weeks? No, he replied firmly. The threat from the Rossi family is real, and my feelings for you and Sophia are real. I just needed to know that if I offered you a choice, a real choice, not one made under duress, you might choose to stay. The anger drained away as quickly as it had come, replaced by a complicated mix of emotions. And Davide? What happened to him? Alessio's jaw tightened. He gave us information about the Rossi operations, valuable information. In exchange, he was allowed to leave the country. He's in Europe now with a new identity. He's alive? I hadn't expected that. I'm capable of mercy, Maya. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Especially when influenced by a woman who sees more good in me than I deserve. Relief washed through me, not because I still cared for Daniel Davide, but because I couldn't have lived with being the cause of his death, no matter his crimes. So now what? I asked quietly. The pretense is gone. The necklace is recovered. The original reason for us being here no longer exists. Alessio moved closer, his hands coming to rest lightly on my shoulders. Now you make a choice, a real one, with full knowledge of who I am and what my world entails. His dark eyes held mine. You and Sophia can leave today. I've established an account in your name, enough money that you'll never struggle again. A new apartment in a safe neighborhood. College fund for Sophia. A clean break if that's what you want. My heart contracted painfully at the thought. And the alternative? Stay, he said simply. Be with me. Let me be a father to Sophia. Accept my world, with all its complications and dangers, but also its protections and privileges. You're asking me to choose a life connected to the Mafia, I said, needing to hear the words out loud, to raise my daughter in that world. I'm asking you to choose me, he corrected, the man who has fallen in love with you, the man who would do anything to keep you and Sophia safe and happy. Love. He'd never used that word before. It hung in the air between us, monumental and terrifying and beautiful. I need time, I whispered. Though even as I said it, I knew my heart had already decided. He nodded, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Later that morning, as promised, Sophia's friend from daycare arrived for their playdate. A little girl named Emma, accompanied by her nervous-looking mother, Jessica. Mrs. Abelli had outdone herself with child-friendly snacks and activities in the garden room, where the girls quickly immersed themselves in imaginative play. Jessica and I sat awkwardly at first, the disparity in our circumstances evident in her wide-eyed glances around the mansion. So, she finally ventured. How long have you and Mr. Vitale been together? It's recent, I replied, unsure how much to share. She nodded, clearly bursting with curiosity but too polite to pry further. Emma talks about Sophia all the time. She says Sophia lives in a castle with a prince. I laughed despite myself. Children and their imaginations. It's not far off, though, is it? Jessica gestured around us. This place is incredible, and Mr. Vitale seems devoted. I followed her gaze to where Alessio stood in the doorway, observing the children with a soft expression I'd come to treasure. He'd insisted on being present today, though he maintained a respectful distance, allowing me to host without interference. He is, I admitted. Emma's father left when she was 2, Jessica confided quietly. It's been just us since then. It's not easy, as you know. I nodded, remembering all too well the struggles of single motherhood. Finding someone who loves your child as their own. That's rare, Maya. Really rare. She watched as Alessio knelt to admire a drawing Sophia proudly held up. Whatever his business is, and people talk, you know they do. He looks at her like she's his whole world, both of us. I murmured, more to myself than to Jessica. Then you're luckier than you know. After Jessica and Emma left, Sophia crashed from the excitement, falling asleep for an afternoon nap. I found Alessio in his study, papers spread before him, phone to his ear. He ended the call when I entered, his expression shifting from business to something warmer. The playdate went well? I nodded, moving to stand before his desk. Sophia's exhausted. She's napping. And you? How are you feeling after this morning's revelations? I took a deep breath. I've made my decision. He stilled, waiting. I want to stay, I said quietly. Not for the security or the comfort or any of the things you could provide. Those matter, yes, especially for Sophia. But I want to stay because when I think about leaving, about not seeing you every day, not sharing your life, it hurts. Physically hurts. Alessio rose, moving around the desk to stand before me, his eyes searching mine. You understand what this means? My world isn't like others. There will always be elements of danger, of secrecy. I know who you are, I replied. I've seen the meetings, the guards, the deference people show you. I know enough to make this choice with open eyes. And Sophia? She adores you. And more importantly, you adore her. I reached for his hand. She deserves a father who would move heaven and earth to protect her, who reads her stories and watches her grow with pride. Whether that man is a businessman or a mafia boss matters less than the love he shows her. Alessio's other hand came up to cup my cheek, his expression fierce and tender simultaneously. I will never give either of you reason to regret this decision. On my life, I swear it. I know. And I did know, with a certainty that should have frightened me but instead felt like coming home. He kissed me then, not with the passion we'd shared in private moments, but with reverence, as if sealing a vow. When we parted, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small black box, different from the one that had held his mother's necklace. I've been carrying this for a week, he admitted, opening it to reveal a ring, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, echoing the necklace's design but distinctly its own, hoping but not daring to assume. My breath caught. Alessio. Marry me, Maya, he said simply. Be my wife. Let me be Sophia's father in name as well as heart. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that your choice today was the right one. Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded, unable to find words for a moment. Yes, I finally whispered. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into his arms. Outside, the world continued as it always had, dangerous, complicated, uncertain. But here, in the circle of Alessio's embrace, I found something I'd stopped believing in long ago. A future bright with promise. A love powerful enough to overcome any obstacle. And a family built not from obligation, but from choice. I had fainted in front of a restaurant and woken in a mafia boss's arms. And somehow, impossibly, it had led me home.